Hello, everybody, and welcome to another episode of 7 Days to Die. And today we're going to be talking about the perk system. So you're going to have to bear with me on this one because a lot of people do ask questions regarding the perks, what you suggest you do, and stuff like that. Now, I've always said perks depend on how you play. However, there are some factors you need to think about when being a new player and whether you're a seasoned player, what settings you've chosen, and stuff like that. Now, the first thing to know is whether or not you've got abundance of loot. If you don't have an abundance of loot, then scavenging perks are something that you want to consider. You know, things like salvage operation, you get more stuff. Treasure hunter, you can find more treasure. Maybe not the treasure hunter to start off with unless you're going to plan on doing the quest fairly quickly. And lucky looter, obviously you can get more stuff, better stuff and stuff like that. So these things here, the general perception perks, I don't tend to bother with at the start because these are things that are going to help you in the long term rather than the short term. Combat perks even, are things to do with rifles, as you can see there. You're not going to have a rifle early on, so don't bother it. It does unlock the hunting rifle crafting, but you're not going to be able to build one at this stage. Demolition's the same. Javelin, yes, you can get a javelin. If you're going to use a spear, I don't know why they call it javelin master, then call them spears. It'd be a spear master. If you want to use spears, they have got good range on them, but I find that when you're trying to gauge them, for the hitboxes on the zombies, they're a little bit tricky, and you can throw them as well. But if you throw a javelin and you don't have a replacement, then you are unarmed, so bear that in mind. The actual attribute for protection is probably not the best thing in the world because, as you can see, it's rifles, explosive spears, and tools. It's not going to be useful for us right now, so perception I tend to leave till later down the line. I may do the lucky looter or the salvage up depending on what I'm going for. The next one is strength. Now, this is the one that I would tend to lean towards first. You got things like broomstick, which is useless. Pummel Pete is good if you want to use clubs and bats, which I tend to use clubs and bats, and go on to the Skull Crusher or the Sledgehammer as well, because I love the Sledgehammer. The Sledgehammer does a lot of damage, even though it's a slow attack. It does much more damage than what a club would do. So I tend to go for that as well. And when you get that busted up right up there, it takes heads clean off. You got things like Sexual Tyrannosaurus, which is reducing melee, which to me is perfect because you're using less stamina, which means there's less stamina to recharge, which means you're using less water and food to recharge your stamina. Heavy armor, I'm not 100% with that one at the beginning because I just wear whatever armor I find. And you'd probably find the same thing for that. Having some armor than no armor is better than, better than having no armor. Pack Mule, depending on how much you want to go back and forward, will depend on your preference on whether you have Pack Mule. I wouldn't bother with Pack Mule because you can get mods later down the line that we'll discuss. That'll help you carry your stuff a little bit easier. Plus, you can do shuttle runs and stuff like that. Master Chef, don't bother with it. You ain't going to be cooking straight away. It's actually quite a pain to start cooking straight off the bat, realistically. I mean, okay, yeah, the Bachelor one you could probably do because you're going to get bacon and eggs. The likelihood is actually you're going to struggle to get the bacon, well, it's the meat that turns into the bacon. Baked potatoes you'd find in the world possibly. Cornbread, again, you're not going to probably find much for that. And tea and coffee, again, you're going to have to start taking out. But tea, to be fair, is probably the only one on there that's easy to get. You can get boiled eggs, but the likelihood of you being able to boil an egg because you haven't got a cooking pot is slim to none. So I'd avoid using Master Chef. Construction perks. I always go for construction perks because minus 6 to mana and 6 to Motherload means that you can, 1, work harder for less stamina, and 2, you get more from it. And when I'm trying to build a base to protect myself at day 7, I do tend to go for something along them lines. You've got the strength for attribute strength, and that does increase stuff to do with shotguns, clubs, sledgehammers, and tools, as it says there. As it says on the tin, you're not going to need any of that realistically right at the start. Save your points unless you need them to bump into one of the high levels of these. Fortitude is definitely something to not overlook. The attribute itself for Fortitude, I wouldn't bother too much unless you're going to run around fisting people with, either that or a machine gun. I won't bother with it too much. Brawler, again, knuckle dusters you're not going to work with. You're definitely going to find a machine gun at this low level. Huntsman, yes, bow and arrow is, that's for the sword. So you get the blunt knives, machetes and stuff like that. Well insulated depends on what area you are. If you're near a desert, then definitely look into something like the weather tolerances, because your water will be consumed more in a desert. Living off the land, don't bother looking at that. You're not going to be able to afford to do farming because you're going to need rotten flesh and all sorts. It's actually quite hard to farm now. It was much easier in the past. They've made it a lot harder now. And pain tolerance is quite useful. The ones you want to look at is healing factor and iron gut. Healing factor increases 1 health every 90 seconds and it goes up pretty quick. So you want to try and get hold of 1 or 2 of them at least. Iron gut means that you reduce food and water loss from physical exertion. Very useful. So it means that the more you do, the less you're going to lose on food, on stamina, which means then you're not having to spend more of your food and water to raise the stamina. And the hiker, I won't worry too much about rule 1 cardio. The next one is agility. Now, agility itself, bows, handguns, and knives. I mean, bows you're going to possibly find a use for, and knives, not so much. Archery, as it says on its tin, wooden bows and iron crossbows, decent, good for long range. And then you can move on to something like a sledgehammer or a club once they move in closer, so that's pretty good. Gunslinger, you're not going to get any guns at this stage, and if you do, they're going to be useless anyway. Deep cuts, if you're stabbing zombies, you are way too close. Run and gun, you could argue it's useful because you should be running away from the zombies. Flurry of blows. This perk applies to clubs, brawling, knives, machetes, and stun battens. Stun battens are useless. Don't use them. Don't bother with them. I won't worry too much about them. Light armor. If you manage to find a lot of light armor, then definitely look into something like this, because again, it's going to increase its durability, increase its how much it's taking, and it'll also reduce the amount that it's using your stamina for. So, parkour. If you're struggling with keeping on top of things, then you can get your parkour. A lot of people argue that stealth perks are very good. Personally, I think you can do a lot of the tasks without the stealth perks for near enough the same effect. However, a lot of people swear by the stealth perks. Something to do if you want to do it, but I wouldn't waste your points on it at this early stage. Intellect. Don't bother with intellect for the first couple of days. There is absolutely no use whatsoever. The better barters, they're probably the only one you should consider if you're doing a lot of quests for the trader. For the first couple of days, avoid it. It's all things that are going to help you down the road with like building vehicles. You definitely want to get yourself a bicycle because that's really useful to get around, using less stamina again, getting around faster, and you can put things inside the bicycle as well. For things like better barter, you just get 5% better deal. It's not really going to give you much down this road. During adventure, I mean, you get jukes, more jukes. No use to you whatsoever at this stage. Charismatic nature is decent, but it's not decent for you because it's for allies. Allies gain 20 stealth and health and stamina when near you. Useful for everybody around you, not so useful for you. That does do really well when you play multiplayer, though. Definitely have somebody have that, and then somebody else can offset it with other things. Precision, again, you're not going to be crafting a chemistry at this level, don't bother. And the engineerings are the same. The last one is perk books. Now, perk books aren't perks that you buy. These are all perks that are in the world, so they're in forms of books. You read the book and it gives you stuff to do. So it'll be the Art of Mining Volume 1 to 7, and vice versa for the rest of them. Once you've unlocked all 7, you unlock the 8th one, which is have a 20% chance to one-shot any ore. And trust me, that actually hits more often than not, especially when you're using an auger. You practically slice through things like a knife through butter. Never overlook the books. They are really, really good. They really help in any situation. So that's the perk system. Now, as I said to you, it all boils down to how you want to play. Personally, I'd go for blunt force trauma and arrows, bow and arrows, and then go finding stuff. Because if you can't hit these zombies and you're trying to avoid them, or you can't stay alive, then you're not going to get any food and water anyway. So the fact that the food and water does more for you isn't really going to help you in the long run. You want to be able to attack the zombies, and then later on in the guide, I'm going to be showing you how to, take on the zombies with a little bit more ease than it would be if you were just run in and kill them. So definitely consider that. If, however, you're going to run the risk of running out of food or just trying to find things in the wilderness to keep you going, don't attack boars because they will kill you at this stage. But you can concentrate on things to do with building. If you are playing a multiplayer, whether it's local multiplayer or an actual server, consider having one of you built to do damage to zombies and one of you built for building. That way, your guy who can do the damage will support the person who can't do the damage, or vice versa. It's one of them where you're gonna offset with each other. So the pair of you or more will be able to support every kind of aspect. It's worth having a chat with that if you're going to do that. But if you're playing solo, then you're going to have to find balance the two. Building isn't necessarily important in this game. This game has a strong building aspect to it. But if you're just looking to survive the 7 days at the beginning and give yourself a bit of a head start, then consider avoiding the build side of things, which I know sounds strange because if you've watched any of my other guides, I will always say build a base because I enjoy building the bases and I enjoy the challenge of surviving the first 7 days because it is a little bit harder. But if you don't want that challenge, find a POI, clear the POI, use the POI as your defense. Set up home. If you want to, if you play multiplayer, put your land claim in it or just put your bed in it, and then you can work from there. So that's the perk system. As you can see, we're still in the middle of nowhere. So we need to start considering moving out from here and actually finding some POI locations. Because if we have a look on the map, we're just surrounded by a lake here and open land around here. Remember, we still have that level 5 bonus. We're still level 1 in game stage 1. The other thing to note as well is what you loot is affected by your game stage. There is a set amount, and if you'd like to know what it is at the time you're playing, your best bet is to check the notes in the patches because they do change it quite often. It's changed quite a few times between Alpha 18 and Alpha 19. I believe like level 120 starts getting you the top of the range stuff. It does jump up really quickly, but level 5 is the one we're aiming for. But bear in mind, as soon as we start leaving this area, we're going to lose that protection because it is only the area around us. So we really need to start thinking about what we want to do next. Hopefully that's helped you out with the perks. If you have any more questions on perks, please let me know in the comment section below. Or if you want a really in-depth guide into perks, like as in like what benefits in numbers and number crunching, then I suggest coming onto the Discord and speaking to the people who play on the multiplayer server because they all bounce off each other doing raids and building bases and all sorts of stuff. So they'll kind of tell you actually this really helps more than the other, depending on your actual playstyle. Also remember that we do have a server if you'd like to join a multiplayer server for people who are relatively new to the game, experienced players. It caters for everybody. So make sure you check it out if you want to, and we can help you further. We can show you how things are done, or we can just leave you to just play in a relatively safe area and enjoy the benefits of the 7 nights being protected by the horde bases that we build. That's going to be it for this episode. It is a shorter episode, but it is about perks, and I really want to concentrate on this episode being about perks because a lot of people do question it, and I want to give you all a chance to have your individual comments and questions on this guide moving forward. But until next time, everybody, take care for now. I shall see you all on the next one. Bye bye for now.